Hey guys, this is Jen Hirsch, Corrective Exercise Specialist with Crossroads Chiropractic and Wellness. And today's video really specifies in on shoulder joint compression, right? There's a lot of people that through the years, like neck tightness, trap tightness, has kind of just pulled that shoulder up into the socket. And so this ends up becoming not only a joint mobility issue, but also an issue of like oxygen in the shoulder, the ball socket itself, right? Now, if you think that you may have this, it's always best to touch base with a practitioner first to double check. But any of these mobilities and myofascial releases still may feel good for someone who's also had chronic neck tightness. So if you want a little bit more specific direction with that, reach out to a practitioner, whether it's me as a corrective exercise specialist, a PT, anyone along those lines to double check that, or even your massage therapist might as well be able to help you with that. But this is going to be a series of options, right? Now, you don't have to do all of these. You can do one or whatever by themselves, right? But I'm putting them all in one video as a reference video so that you get a chance to kind of play with it. Now, the thought process with any sort of mobilization is most times, we have to get that overactive muscle to let go first. So these are going to be some myofascial release techniques that are specific to shoulder compression. Right? Now, for shoulder compression, there's a lot of muscles that go into this, right? The pectoral goes into it, the trap goes into it, your subscap goes into it. Now, these techniques can be done with a roller or a ball, not the trap one, but I find it easier to do it with a ball personally, just with my mobility. So when we're wanting to release the pectoral, what I'll do is I'll take a ball like so, and I'll get on like the edge of a wall or door frame, right? And I'm going to just place, for the sake of the video, I'm just going to place this ball on this pec and gently move my neck and shoulders, right? If you're up against a wall, it's going to look very similar to this. And moving neck and shoulders, moving this around, this whole complex affects that shoulder, right? If we're looking at trap, there's kind of one of two ways to do this. One, if your bench was not in the way, you can get it flat against a wall like this, right? This is an aggressive lean back here. And I can lean into the trap this way, kind of adjusting my angle, maybe even like hugging my arm over to get between the shoulder blade and trap connections, right? Or be gentle with this one. We can also go against a door frame or a wall from in front. Now, when we look at the trap is wrapping up and forward, right? So we want to push it up and back, right? So in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that ball kind of 45 degrees here. I'm going to lean into it and turn to essentially get that pressure here and pushing back to help take that pressure off. Now, anytime you're doing myofascial release, right, you want to basically go to first sensation. So if you're feeling that trigger point, if you're feeling that aggressive reaction, right, you don't have to dig deeper for it to work better for most cases, right? You just want to hold for a couple of deep breaths, get that to let go. Now, the next part that affects the shoulder complex a lot and kind of gets under addressed is that subscap area. Now, I'm not talking about my armpit, right? What I'm talking about is like this meaty part back here. So my arm kind of ends here, that's where my trap connection is. And then the meaty part of my lat is right in here. So I'm coming in this direction, right? This can be done one of a couple of ways. You can do this with a roller on the floor and just kind of lay on it, right? You can use a percussion device if the others are too aggressive and just kind of move in through here, right? Kind of coming in this direction. I've got it on a low setting, so it's a little loud right now. Or if you're wanting more a static release, once again, I can get up against a wall, right? I can kind of bring my arm up and back like this and just lean into it. I kind of have to push forward a little bit and then rock into it like so. So I kind of find that spot and then just turn onto it. So I'm here, find that spot, kind of turn onto it on the wall. Those are going to be some great myofascial release techniques in order to start taking pressure off the shoulder complex. I always do pecs first, subscap first, and then trap. A lot of times if you get subscap and trap to let go a little bit better, subscap and pec, then the trap inherently doesn't have as much pressure, doesn't need as much interaction. Now, we've already done a myofascial release. We want to do some gentle stretches, right? Now, with the gentle stretches, we're stretching the shoulder complex, right? So if you want to do a bicep stretch, right, the hand is going to go against the wall here. I can gently turn into it. So my hand is here against the wall. I'm gently turning into it. Most people, that's a nice forearm bicep stretch. Why does it affect the shoulder, you say? Well, if my bicep is too shortened, it's also contributing to pec tightness. Now for pecs, depending on your mobility level and depending on, what your body's been through, different stretches are going to be more effective, right? For a lot of people that end up feeling it back in their shoulder blades, which I don't want you to feel in your shoulder blades. So what I want you to do is, there's a straight arm stretch, and you can see this in one of my other videos as well. There's a bent arm stretch, and there's a 90-degree stretch. For any of these stretches, if you feel them in your shoulder blade, I just want you to apply a little pressure in the front of your hand to just secure your shoulder blade a little bit, and then turn into it. So the straight arm stretch, I'm up against the door frame like so, and I'm just turning into it and feeling that stretch through the front of the shoulder. Now the bent arm one, same concept, except this elbow is now going against the door frame and I'm turning into it. I'm picturing stretching from this muscle itself. Taking a deep breath with it will also enhance that stretch, because we don't have to move as much, but we can use our diaphragm and other muscles in order to get a better stretch, plus lowers cortisol. That's good stuff, right? Now for the 90 degrees, what I'll do here is, my arm is, this nice 90 degrees. I'm gonna go against the door frame. For me, I have to just push a little bit first and then turn. That way it doesn't go back to my shoulder blades. Any of those stretches, hold for 10 to 30 seconds. I'm not gonna count, so I just say hold for a couple of deep breaths and you're good. So this handles stretching pecs, this handles foam rolling those other areas. Now, if we're still needing like a subscap stretch and a trap stretch, right? So for subscap, we could do this a couple of different ways. One of my favorites is just a side bend stretch, because this also gets the hip too. So my foot is gonna go over, my arm is gonna come up over like this, and you're gonna generally feel a nice stretch in through here, as long as you're breathing deeply with it. If you've been locked up for a long time, that might not be isolated enough. So what you can do is you can take a bench or a foam roller, and thumb is up, and I'm gonna put my hand, I'm gonna face this way just for the sake of the camera. You can face this way, it's fine. I'm gonna put my hand here, and I'm gonna sit back, right? So I'm sitting back, and as I'm doing this, I'm actually kind of pushing my hip to the floor and turning a little bit. Pushing my hip into the floor and turning a little bit to deepen the stretch in through there. Once again, if we're taking deep breaths with it, you shouldn't have to get into as deep of an interaction with this. You should be able to just breathe, kind of give it a second to settle, and not have to try to force things. Just like with any of my videos, we do things to tolerance, right? So if your tolerance is less that day, we do it less that day. If your tolerance is more that day, do it a little bit more that day, right? And your mobility level is going to affect it. So what might look aggressive for some people is not going to be a good stretch for someone else. Please always keep that in mind with these videos. Now, another technique that we can use, those are all stretches, right? We did our rolling, we did our stretches. Now let's do some joint mobilization. Now, if the shoulder compression is being contributed to a lot by neck compression, we can apply one of these neck decompression pillows. Now, you would want to follow the directions in the box with this. Generally, what this is used for is we all get that tech neck, right? Because we're on our phones, blah, blah, blah. And this neck compression can contribute to that shoulder, vice versa. What came first, like chicken or the egg, right? So using this, a couple times a week, or according to the directions on the box, right, can help take pressure off of those discs around, like, C4, C7, those things that affect our grip, those things that affect, our shoulders, our collarbones, right? This can be a gentle, just if you honestly work at a computer or desk, this guy right here is just good prevention, period, right? That's an option to handle some of the neck compression. Now, if we want the mid, back, and shoulder area through here to start mobilizing a little bit better, to take pressure off the shoulder, there's a couple of ways. This is going to be more just mid-back flexibility versus the shoulder itself, but it can help. I'm going to get up against a bench like so. I notice this bench is just barely, underneath my armpits. Like I can rest my arm here and I'm pretty level. So, sitting on the floor with a couch behind you, right? You can even do this sitting on a bench with your bar behind you if you're getting ready to do like bench presses, right? Wherever my pelvis is neutral is how I want to sit. Some people, that's like this. Some people, that's like this. I tend to feel more comfortable in more of a neutral pelvis here. And that's my rib cage in the same line as my hip bone. I'm going to make a nice shelf right here. I'm going to gently inhale, come to the ceiling, exhale, and use my core to crunch back forward. So this is this nice stretch using my breath in but I don't want to just yoink forward from here because it's a lot of neck compression. So I'm going to go exhale and bring the body forward with a crunch. This way we're mobilizing mid-back and shoulders, but we're also waking up your front core to help strengthen after we've mobilized. That's just for good subscap mid-back movement. Now, let's say that shoulder and neck are still pretty tight. There's a couple of distractions that we can do to kind of remind the body that it had a range of motion. Generally, when using a distraction technique of some kind, we're using an outside source or tool to remind the body, hey, you used to do this, you don't have to be so tight anymore. Those modalities can be bands, those modalities can just be silly movement, right? To be like, hey, you don't have to be tight right now. In this case, I'm actually going to use gravity and a little bit of silly movement in order to decompress the shoulder. So what I'll do here is I'll lay down in a place where I'm fairly comfortable. I recommend something kind of soft, right? And when I'm here, I like to have one leg down, flat, just because I've had some, back injuries, right? Just to give myself a little bit more support. But what I'm going to do here is the opposite knee is going to be up, opposite hand is up. My arm is going to be kind of flat on the floor. I'm going to reach up with a crunch, and then I'm going to let the shoulder drop. Right? So I'm literally searching for almost like, now don't hurt your shoulder, right? But I'm searching for that audible up and then drop. So at the top, I'm just letting the shoulder relax and letting gravity do its thing. You can make this a nice big reach, or you can just do a couple of these numbers, right? Where you're kind of shaking and letting the shoulder drop. And what I'm doing here is I'm using gravity at the top to remind the shoulder, like, we can let this go. We can let this go. That's one technique. Now, there's two other options too with bands, right? If we want the shoulder complex to just get a nice stretch this direction, what I can do here, we'll take this off for the sake of this part, is I could take my band attached to something pretty solid, right? And I'm going to put it around the shoulder that I want to be kind of pulled back and pulled away from the socket, right? So I'm going to step forward like so. My pelvis is neutral, my hips are neutral. I'm going to have the rest of my body basically fight as I let the shoulder just relax and get pulled back. This is a great way to be like, hey, remember, you don't have to be tight anymore. And then I can kind of step back out of it, shake the shoulder a little bit, reset, step back in. The rest of me staying real solid, and then I try to relax the shoulder and let it pull back. Now with this, I'm still keeping that same motion here, but trying to just let this joint chill out. Now the last one, you do need to wait for, start lighter than you think you need to. This is to get the shoulder to relax in this plane. So what I'll do, for the sake of the video, I'm at like a bit of a 45-degree angle here. Normally you'd want it really straight out, right? But my arm is going to go in like so, but I'm coming from this side, right? So right now, this is almost impossible to show from this angle. I'm pulling the band straight this direction. So when the band is pulled this direction, it's like it's pulling my shoulder away from me in this plane. You can do this without a weight, but if you have like a kettlebell or a weight, right? So I need to get this a little bit higher in my armpit, right? So like really get it up in there, high armpit, right? This shirt's not helping. But really getting in that armpit, taking that weight and just letting that band kind of pull me and just do some nice gentle rocking and movement. Once again, we're using movement that it's not used to and an external cue in order to be like, hey, here's some oxygen. Hey, here's some movement. You may get some like tingling in forearms, may get a little tingling in the hands. If it should go right away. A lot of times what happens is once we've gotten a little bit more oxygen in that area, your hands can feel kind of puffy just because you've had an increase in blood flow, right? Now, I'm purposely going to show you the trap stretch last, because a lot of people go straight to this trap stretch and then just stick with that instead of addressing other sources. So I want you to be gentle with the trap stretch because that tissue is already overused. And remember to apply other protocol and other modalities first so you don't end up overstretching this tissue. My favorite way to do this is to put my arm behind my back like so. So we're creating length, right? And then I'm not pulling forward, right? I'm kind of hooking my fingers on this suboccipital bone behind my neck. And what I like to do is to actively push my shoulder down. So I'm pushing my shoulder down as I gently just lift up. So I'm not cranking forward, I'm not cranking up, I'm just applying just a teeny tiny bit of lift, but mostly making that stretch by actively pushing my shoulder down. Now, just like any other stretch of an overactive tissue, you want to come in and out of this stretch gently. You want to breathe into it. You want to treat it with respect, because if that trap muscle gets pissed off, then your neck and shoulder are going to hurt more. But sometimes that very gentle traction is just enough to get it to remember it doesn't have to be so tight. So I hope this helps people. I hope this, hopefully gives you at least some ideas of some things to think about. If you have any further questions, you can always reach out to me, book, like, subscribe, share videos, all that fun stuff. And we're gonna do our best to get you to feeling your best.